more minutes for people to join, but before that, I think it's okay that I already start with some very simple household rules. This is a roundtable, so we're looking for engagement from everyone who's attending. We have some presentations prepared, but we also are looking forward to hear your opinion. So we have two ways to engage with our session today. We'll use Mentimeter. So that's later on in the presentation. You will find a QR code. If you be prepared, have your phone at the hand to scan the code, and then you can give your opinion to certain statements. And of course, if you have any questions for the panel, you can submit them in the chat function. You can do that during the presentation itself already, or of course, when we start the roundtable discussion itself. And for technical issues, we would like you to reach out to Islam, who's our backup here, who's making sure at the back end that everything is running smoothly. And that's actually a very simple household rules that I would like to share with everyone. So I'll leave the slide open here for a few more seconds so that everyone recently joining can also have the time to prepare. So most important thing is have your phone with you so that you can participate in the Mentimeters and submit, think about questions that you would like to ask one of our presenters, and you can submit them in the chat function during the whole session, and we'll address them in the roundtable. And if we're not able to somehow answer your question, then we'll get back to you afterwards to answer it anyway. So let's see, how are we doing on time? So let's give it one more minute for people to join, and then I suggest we start the session.
Ja, kom. We gaan een koffie.
Yeah, some background noise. Maybe everyone can mute themselves, unless you're a presenter, of course. So my side, a minute is done. So I suggest we start with the session today. Again, welcome everyone to our roundtable. It's my pleasure to open the session. My name is Clarina Dobbelaar. I'm VP Marketing and Portfolio Management at Companion, and I'm your host of today. But I'm very happy that I have a strong crew with me here of speakers. First of all, we have with us Paul. Paul, you're global lead for marketing fast track expansion team. You originally from South Africa, but now live in Germany. So you're more on the east southern side, I would say. I'm trying to imagine a sort of round table virtually here. I'm more from the southern part of the Netherlands, so I'm more on the west-south part. You're more on the east-south part. I know you mentioned to me that apart from being, of course, heavily involved in the fast track and sure step and sorry, now I missed the term. My excuse. My apologies. Sorry. Now I lost my own track. My apologies. I'm looking for one term and I can't find it. Success by design. Apologies. Yes. So apart from fast track, you're the specialist also on success by design, and you're going to share with us the new trends in that area. And apart from being heavily involved on the Microsoft side, I know in your free time you also like to be behind a camera, climbing mountains, and occasionally act as a magician, which we maybe hope to hear more from you today as well. So you're more on the east southern part. I would assume I'm more on the west southern part. And then Maarten, thank you for joining. You're head of project management at Dycotrade, also based from the Netherlands, but more in the northern side of the Netherlands. And hopefully you can share with us your experience with challenges that you have encountered in delivering projects and also ways how you overcome them. So more the practical side of things. And then we have Agne, who is part of the Companion team. She's heading up our enterprise business line. She's been in the business already for a very, very long time. Started as an accountant, becoming a consultant, heavily involved also in big implementation projects, and now heading up the enterprise business line within Companion. And apart from challenging yourself on the business side, I also came to know you as someone who likes to challenge herself on the personal side. Also climbing mountains and heavy trails, but I know you recently did that in Colombia. So also on the personal side, I know you really try to stretch the limits and see how far you can reach. So from that side, I think we have a great team here of speakers together. So let's look at the agenda. So the welcome introduction, that's done. We're going to listen to Success by Design, a more broader introduction from Paul. Then we're going to dive into the challenges from the field through Maarten. And then we're going to look into the future, how the Success by Design will look in the area of AI, before we dive into the panel discussion. So with having that said, Paul, is it okay that I hand over to you and welcome you to share your thoughts on Success by Design?
Thank you, Clarinda. Hi, everybody, and I'm pleased to be here with you today. I'm more pleased even to hear that my co-speaker Agna is also doing mountains. So Agna, we have to talk about this, and this is the hobby. And I started this as a personal challenge because I'm really afraid of heights. And so I pick rock climbing as my sport to challenge that, and I won't say I've overcome the fear of heights, but it's kind of now under control. If you could give me a next there, Clarinda. My other hobby is being a magician. I just came out of a very successful Halloween show, which was great fun. So I do quite a dark, spooky type of magic, But if we ever meet at a partner event, feel free to corner me for some cheap entertainment. Yeah. If you could give me a next there, Clarinda. The story I'd like to talk to you about today. I was solution architect number 13 in the fast track team, right? And I want to talk to you about what a day in our life looked like back in 2015, right? We are part of the product group, part of engineering, and we were firefighting all the escalations that happened pre and post go live on really big and complex implementation projects. My team was really small team, really just dealing with the biggest and most complex projects. And we were fighting fires. Work-life balance was not really great, right? Because as soon as you finish one thing, the next one is in line. And when we started looking at the underlying causes of some of these escalations, I'll give you a good example. We get a performance escalation. And basically, when we investigated deeper, what we found is that the partner or the customer did not really invest heavily in performance testing. They tested with 3,000 records on some small customization inside a high volume process, right? And invariably then 1 million records come on the day we go live and the system tanks, right? So it felt like these problems were avoidable. And so what we thought is, instead of just firefighting this, which is not scalable, right? We couldn't bring this benefit to many partners and many projects. We would really have to engage further left in the life cycle of projects. So we can talk to a partner and a customer in the early days and go, have you got your mind wrapped around the performance requirement? Do you understand throttling limits? Are you planning for performance testing? How are you going to do that, right? And guess what? If we do those things, then maybe we will not have those fires to fight at the end of the project. If you could give me the next slide. And so Success by Design was really born. We wrote a book, which is a 750 pager. It took us about a year to write it. That took all the learnings, so all the patterns, all the architectural patterns, the governance patterns. Every time something went wrong on a project, and we'd supported thousands of projects by this time, right? So we could document that, and we could come up with a question in a review that would aim to confirm on your project, are you likely to run into the same trouble that we've seen other projects run into in the past? And so our best practices or Success by Design was really born out of documenting what we really experienced in practice. And even today, the book is a couple of years old, but it's still very good material. It's migrated from book form to learn.microsoft.com. And I would still say, if you're a project manager out there, you want to read the chapter on project governance every now and then. If you're an architect dealing with integration design, you want to be into that chapter. If you're implementing your first ever CE project, go read the chapter on in the initiation phase. What does an environment checklist look like? What are the things that you need to take decisions about? There's really good guidance in here. If you could give me the next slide. Now, the way we brought Success by Design to market is really running reviews. We talk about solution blueprint review as the key early stage in the life cycle, where we try and identify as many potential complexities. When we say risk is never meant to be a bad word. Just risk means we see something that's going to be somewhat tricky to do, right? And if you call performance as a risk, it doesn't mean you can't manage it, but you've called it out. You're going to really think about how you're going to manage it, and that then gives us more certainty. We mitigate the way forward in our plan. And if you don't know how to mitigate it, if the customer has some very high level requirement and I don't think Dynamics is going to handle this, then we want to extend and provide you access to experts like the team that you have at Companion, like the team in Fast Track that can provide guidance then. A lot of our guidance is actually shipped on the implementation portal, so you can read it for yourself, right? We help you find the things on learn.microsoft.com. But you can also reach out and raise a topic with us, and we will then help that. We have other detailed workshops in other phases of the life cycle. Very importantly, before we go live, let's just do a checklist. Have we covered all the important things before we go live? Because maybe there's something that we missed, and then we're going to have trouble and escalations around the go live. If you could give me the next slide there. So I had a lot of partners come back to me in the early days and said, but you know what, success by design is a tax, Paul, because you come here and you ask me 100 questions about my project and it takes me time to answer that, right? And what is the benefit that I get? And what was interesting, for some projects, some questions don't bring a benefit to that project. If I ask, do you have a project sponsor? Well, we've all seen projects fail because they don't have one, so it's an important question, but normally it's something that the best practices in any partner organization should take care of. However, we've seen many projects fail because people didn't take care of. So you know what, we're going to ask the question. And hopefully you can just do a quick yes and tick it, because then we know it's not an issue. But we do want to raise everything where we've seen a project take a knock and we can avoid that. That's what we try and do with these reviews. So one partner believed to such an extent that this was a tax, he added 150,000 US dollars to his project price if Fast Track was going to be involved. And I had quite a chuckle and I go, okay, so that's the value that we bring to you. Now let's look at the data. We had thousands of projects that went without success by design. We then had thousands of projects that had success by design. So we could compare. And I'll give you a couple of interesting metrics. Projects with success by design delivered faster than the ones without, on average, right? And it's interesting, not maybe faster in terms of their original budget, because the original budget often left out key activities. But if you look at the rolling delays, then it takes longer, right? So on actual performance, they take less time. They lead to higher adoption by the customer, so the customer is happy, and the other side of that coin, less customer churn. The customer doesn't walk away from the product. So we could see from the data that success by design was not a tax, but something that really brings value to every project that engages it. So that's my sales pitch on why you should be interested in applying the principles of success by design. Could you give me one click there? The real proof for me that this works is I don't spend my after hours time fighting escalations before and post go live anymore. It used to be 80% of my time. It is now down to 20% of my time, right? That's something I can live with. There'll always be some things that we need to troubleshoot, but we have work-life balance back. We get much fewer escalations on projects since we've implemented success by design. I'll be back later to talk a little bit about when we think about agentic experiences, how does success by design still work? Does it still work for that? I'll see you later for that topic, but first I'm going to hand you over to the capable hands of Martin in Dicotrade. Martin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. Really excited to join today's roundtable about success by design, and also eagerly awaiting for what the future will bring with Agentic by design. About Paul will talk a little bit more about that topic later on. What I would like to do is share the experience from the field through the projects that we have executed at Dicotrade. But before we talk about the projects and the experiences, let me first talk you a little bit more about our company, Dicotrade. At Dicotrade, we deliver a solution for the commodity trade and the risk management. This empowers our customers to manage their trading operations, logistics, finance, risk. It's all integrated in one solution, and that solution is fully embedded in Microsoft's flagship ERP, being D365 Finance and Supply Chain Management. With the global nature of commodity trading, Dicotrade supports organizations around the world. We really have a strong and growing customer base in Europe and North America, but recently we also experienced quite a bit of traction in Africa. So it's really a global nature, this business. Couple of details to point out on this slide is that we will celebrate our 25th anniversary next year. Headcount is just shy of 100, and we are located in Amsterdam, just outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Now, if we look at the projects that we do, just to give you an idea of the type of projects, then on average, our projects will have between 100 and 500 users. They have a fair bit of complexity because we are often involved in multiple legal entities, multiple countries, roll out multiple currencies, also multiple solutions from Microsoft, besides finance and supply chain management, also customer engagement, a Power Platform. So there is definitely a bit of complexity in the project, and that is a nice segue into the next slide, where we're going to talk about the challenges that we have faced. So based on the experience with implementing D365 and the DicoTrade solution, we have noticed that many of the challenges on our projects can be traced back to a few recurring themes. And talking to other Microsoft partners, we have received confirmation that that we're not really unique in that sense, because they're facing the same challenges. And I also expect that the audience will recognize some or even all of these themes themselves. So let's go through them one by one. First one is the unclear scope and objective. Unclear scope and objective often leads to a misalignment expectation between the business, the customer, but also the delivery team. So that's the DicoTrade project team. Teams start in the beginning to work hard, but not necessarily on the right things. On top of that, the scope gradually shifts without formally addressing it. And this can happen because a project can last for 1 or 2 years, and you can imagine that market changes, the project team changes, sometimes new stakeholders are involved, but also due to new legislation, things change. So the beginning, the scope is not really clear, and throughout the product, we see that it drifts away even further. Second challenge is the poor requirement management. This means that what is built doesn't really fully meet with the requirements from the customer, the needs from the customer. And without a structured approach to capturing and validating and tracking the requirements, gaps and rework will almost always happen. So that's another challenge. A third one is the issue of insufficient testing and validation. When testing is rushed or it is not done completely, issues will surface late in the project, and in the end also drive the cost and hurting the user experience and the confidence of the user as well. So insufficient testing is really an important one to keep an eye out. Then finally, we have the topic of over-customization and unnecessary complexity. This can even turn a well-planned implementation into a maintenance burden. It's important that we keep close to the standard solution and manage complexity, basically, and that is key for the long-term success of a project. So keeping it simple. So these challenges, if we look at them with the success by design approach, and if we go to the next slide, then we will address them one by one, seeing how success by design has helped us. Because success by design, as Paul has mentioned, is a structured framework that directly address the main challenges that we discussed in the previous slide. The challenges we covered in that slide will still remain. It's not that success by design will do the miracle of changing these challenges. They will still exist, but it's more of a matter of how we address them, and that is what successful design will do for us. And it all starts with clearly registering the challenges, deciding on how we will address and mitigate them, and in the end, to have a more predictive delivery of the project. Now let's take a look at each of these challenges and see how success by design have helped us. So first of all, the unclear scope and the objective. These are resolved through first of all, through the strategy blueprint. This is a document that we produce at the very beginning of the project, where we clearly capture together with the customer what the scope and the business objectives are. Then at the end of the initiate phase, so a little bit later in the project, we create a solution blueprint, ensuring that every design decision aligns with the agreed strategy. The solution blueprint is continuously updated through the project, and especially when the scope and objectives change, to reevaluate what that means for the overall impact on the project. And you can think of your schedule and your budget. So these are two important mechanisms: strategy blueprint and solution blueprint. Then we move on to the next one, which is the poor requirement management. This is drastically improved by using the business process catalog, which contains all the end-to-end processes and drives the structures workshop to collect the requirements and validate them during a conference room pilot. In the conference room pilot, we're using, excuse me, in the conference room pilot, we're using real end-to-end process demonstration to the customer to show what the requirements has been registered and which are still open. And then finally, the solution blueprint then confirms the final requirements and the solution alignment. Then the third point, the insufficient testing and validating. These are mitigated through a well-defined test strategy that outlines test types such as unit test, end-to-end test, integration test, all those types of testing, but also the coverage and the quality assurance of the testing itself. A great tool that we use here is from Microsoft Azure DevOps. This is where we will manage all the test plans and the execution of the test, and also register the results. Then lastly, we have the final challenge, the over-customization and complexity. And this is reduced by adopting the fit to standards approach. So focus on configuration instead of customization. We always challenge the business, challenge the customer, that they really need to justify it, why they want to have customizations where we are adjusting the code for them. And we are looking at low code, no code alternatives, for instance, through the Power Platform, to maintain a solution that's much more flexible and simple as well. And that's the end of my slide, handing it over back to Clarinda.
Yeah, thank you, Maarten, so much. Thank you so much. So for explaining how Success by Design is helping you in real life projects. And of course, we're now in the age of AI, and we have Paul here. So we're really keen to also understand how will AI, Agentic AI, influence how we are going to do implementations going forward. So Paul, can I invite you back on stage, so to say, to shed some lights on what you see or you expect is going to happen?
Indeed, happy to be back on stage. Thank you. If you want to do some interesting reading, research the words frontier firm. Now Microsoft is positioning themselves in becoming a frontier firm. Now, what does that mean? And we see sort of three phases of how AI is adopted. The first phase, everybody is playing already, right? You're a human, you have a co-pilot assistant, right? You prompt it, it helps you, you get things done, you're a little bit more productive. Think of that as the first phase of AI. But think of the second phase as already having agents that almost function like colleagues. It's like an agent that you can bring onto a team. So you could have, for example, a project governance agent that keeps on monitoring your project, various indicators, and come up and help you identify risk and mitigation strategies around that risk, right? And that can take up part of the role of what classically maybe a project manager or a lead architect would do. So this is the second phase where we're starting to collaborate with specific agents. The human tends to be at the center driving it, etc. The agents are not always that autonomous. But then we move in phase 3 to more and more autonomous agents, right? Now, I am going to give you an autonomous agent, not from the work environment, just so you get some idea of what an autonomous agent could look like. I have a personal blog, and the blog is in settled in an area of South Africa where there's beautiful wildflowers that come out once a year after the spring rains. And the flowers have very intricate names, beautiful look and feel, some history and culture around it. So I've now got an agent that can write me a WordPress blog post and can give me a new blog post every week. So every week it puts a blog post, it puts it on my WordPress site, and it basically just leaves it for me to do an approve or a small edit before I send it out. Now, if you've ever maintained a blog and you think of the effort of maintaining something, you'd really appreciate how an autonomous agent like that can take the workload and drastically reduce it. But that agent is not alone. That agent works with another agent that goes of all the, it keeps track of which flowers we've already documented in the blog post. So it goes of all the flowers we've already documented, make sure we don't repeat one, and find me the most interesting one. And I put a definition of what I consider interesting. It's referred to in a poem or in a song, or it has a very interesting colloquial name, right? And that agent collaborates with the one that actually creates the blog post. Now I have two agents talking to one another, and I'm just in the end maybe human in the loop for a final decision. So that is sort of what we're thinking of phase 3. And there's a lot of opportunities to bring agents like that. If you've not noticed the change in Microsoft and the product line, everything is about agentic experiences now, and this is a big part of our life going forward, right? It is a major change in the industry. You could give me the next slide. The problem that we have now, if we do with projects, right? You saw the tanker on the first slide of Martin as well. You know, that is our big ERP implementation project, right? It takes 2 years. We have to do a lot of rigorous stuff. We have to manage our requirements. We have to have our test strategies, right? But then we have the speedboats. Now, what are the speedboats? The speedboats are the agentic opportunities, right? The things that we can do with artificial intelligence around this. And how are we going to take advantage of that? And how does that change the way we look at projects? Now, let's look at one scenario. Give me the next slide, right? So the story I would like to present to you here, you know, I would title this particular story, "The Tanker Needs to Learn to Turn Faster," right? So let's think of a scenario. And these, by the way, are the scenarios you might see on your project. Let's say we have a global manufacturing company. They use Dynamics 365 for their operations, right? And the project is using traditional success by design, so highly governed, multi-phase reviews, risks logs, predictable cadence of design, you know, a design, build, test, deploy cycle, right? Project team is very disciplined and deliberate. Everything goes through change control, right? This is how we think we execute well. Along comes Copilot Agent for Supply Chain. It's a new capability that you can unlock for your customer. Now, Copilot Agent for Supply Chain changes your delivery rhythm because the agent model now receives weekly updates, sometimes even daily model refreshes from Microsoft, which means what it's doing in production today is going to be different to what it did in production yesterday, right? How do you think about bringing that into your environment? Your traditional checkpoints like a design review, a test sign-off, go live readiness no longer align so cleanly because the agent doesn't behave like normal code testing, right? How do you test an agent? If you ask one question and you ask the same question again, do you get exactly the same answer from the AI? You don't, because it's probabilistic, it's not deterministic. So how do you even test that, right? So that is a difference and a shift that we see. If I can have the next slide, and we look at making the picture a little bit more complex. So let's say you are, in this case, finding that the speedboats multiply on you, right? Maybe you're a large utilities customer. You have a customer service agent that will help you automate and triage customer incidents, generate knowledge articles, even routing field technicians, right? So suddenly your team can run into hundreds of micro deployments to fine-tune the agent behavior, maybe using telemetry, reinforcement data, learning, compare with how humans would take the decision, right? And so that old world of structured sprints, you know, QA validation of each feature, in the AI world, you know, your testing, how do you measure that your model is doing well? We start to talk about evals. Now, what is an eval? Think about, I deploy a new version of my agent in production. I route 5% of my traffic through it. I evaluate whether that 5% is better than the 95% that I had in production before. If it's better, I route 100% of my traffic across and I can decommission the old version. And then I start working on the next version. And these cycles, it can happen within days because a small change to a prompt can materially change the outcome of an agent. So maybe I'll do a small prompt change and I want to deploy that to production, right? So there's a whole new thing coming in. And if you can give me the next slide, I try to contrast some of the challenges. And by the way, I don't have answers on how we're going to deal with everything here, but just think about this and how we will have to change the way we work on systems going forward. Your software development lifecycle cannot be requirements, design, build, test, and deploy only, right? You need some of this continuous evaluation, retraining of models, prompt optimization. You're shifting a little bit from a fixed methodology to a more fluid methodology, right? And you have to mix it because you can't make everything so fluid because then your big ERP project's going to die. Your tanker still needs a lot of that governance, right? But maybe around the speedboats, you can be more flexible and look at new approaches. Testing, deterministic testing on the left, and more probabilistic evaluation. Is the model good? Does it have precision? Does it bring the same data back every time? Does it have some memory? Does it have good accuracy? So you're moving from test scripts more to evaluation sets that you can use to evaluate your agentic experiences. If you look at how you deploy things, your CI/CD pipelines, maybe on your tanker, you're deploying quarterly or monthly or once a year, but in agents, you could deploy hourly or daily. That's a very different way you're going, and you move maybe from governance to sort of telemetry-driven agility because you still need control in the process. How do you know when you've made a bad move and you need to revert it, right? Governance moves from heavy review cycles on the tanker to more lightweight rolling reviews, that you do as needed on the agentic experiences. So it's more not fixed checkpoints, but sort of a continuous observability. You always have evaluations running. You keep an eye on your agent all the time. So if you deploy something and it doesn't work, you get the signal and you can roll back, right? Dependencies are different. I think even for agents, you need trusted data. You need good underlying business logic. So you need to do everything on the tanker side right because the agent runs on top of that. But you need to create new structures. How do we learn? How do we use telemetry? How do we do safe experimentation without exposing our customers in production? So from this rigid structure, we move to a more symbiotic view of life. If you could give me the next slide. So when we look at how we're going to go forward now, we have a project, and I'll share with you the code name as long as you don't go blog about it. All right, we're calling it Project Nightingale, and its North Star is to take success by design and infuse it with these new agentic by design principles and to give better guidance in terms of how to think about your project approach and moving your companies to more of a frontier firm. And we do it for ourselves as well. When we say empower all solution architects, I talk to the architects in my team, but we talk to the architects in your teams as partners as well, and to customers so that they can do it as well. Clarinda, next slide, please. So what we're doing is we're infusing agentic by design in, and so you will find that you'll have some of the familiar stuff of success by design, the phases, initiate through operate, right? But looking at agent first digital experience, how do you integrate agents? How do you do things differently? That's how success by design will change in the next months as we work on it. Can I have the next slide again? Now to do this, there's a couple of things. We cannot take a year out to write the book like we did with the Dynamics Implementation Guide because this technology moves too quickly. So we're using agents to help us write this. This will be a continuous life thing. That brings its own challenges because how do you learn what the best way is to implement AI? Well, you're going to have to look at the latest documentation because it's not going to be the same as last week, right? So keep that in mind. But also, we want to put agents into the game so that we have agents that help you with the work that you need to do. So if you need to design a business implementation of unified routing, to use an example, an agent could interview you about the key requirements for unified routing and can help you generate the implementation plan, the step-by-step guide for that. We will, of course, put a lot of new learning plans out there, both for our internal people and for partners and independent software vendors, right? So you can learn some of the new stuff. And then I think the key thing that changed is that the SPD framework, which was a human-first approach, now really needs to think about how it can use agentic experience to help us be more productive, to reduce the admin data entry that we do. We need good data around our projects, right? Otherwise, we can't draw conclusions. But do we have to capture everything manually? If you have a document, do you have to answer all my review questions? Can you not just upload your document and we'll tick off the questions and maybe just ask you the 5 questions that your document did not address, right? So we'll be looking at driving the efficiency in the tooling to bring this to life. And I think you can give me one more slide there. And that's the one where I will leave my soapbox and we can move into the panel discussion.
Yeah, this was your final slide, right, Paul?
Yes,
or did
indeed,
you want to end?
no, indeed it was. Indeed it was.
Okay, very good.
And so
it
surprised me. It surprised me even because I was just starting to enjoy this. But
we'll keep doing that, because I think this is the right moment now to open up the panel discussion, the round table. And I was trying to explain how I thought this was a virtual round table where we have me more in the southwest, Maarten more in the northwest, and then Agne more in the east north, and you more in the east south. So it is a virtual sort of round table, but of course the goal is to also engage with other participants here. So let me stop sharing the slides here so that we can see each other. And I would like to indeed invite at least everyone who's presenting to, I see you already have your cameras on, very well. And thank you indeed for anyone else who would like to participate in discussion to also switch on your camera. I would like to invite everyone who has questions to submit them in the chat, and then we can pick them up from there. And in the meantime, of course, we have prepared already some questions to start up the discussion. And yeah, one of the things, Paul, you touched on AI. This is a big topic. Of course, there's more things happening than AI. But if you look at governance and risks in projects, how do you think AI is going to influence it? Is it going to influence that we're going to do things differently in the future in regards to governance and risks?
So the first thing I would observe on risks, and if you look at classic success by design, you do a review on the project, we generate a bunch of risks and we talk about mitigation strategies. And then often that risk list kind of dies there, right? And what we think of going forward is that a risk should be a live construct, right? It should be the current view of that risk. And who updates it? In the past, a project manager would typically update it, or a lead architect on a project would update it. But now I think an agent can come and it can enrich it. It can observe how you're handling something in your code, and it goes, you know what, throttling limits is no longer a risk because your integration code is handling it properly, and it can propose to close out the risk for you. If you do a review and you open up some risks, and then later on you do a subsequent review on maybe a narrower part of the system, and that document indicates that that original risk is now mitigated, we want to automatically close it. Now, if we have a set of live risks that are relevant, imagine you log onto the portal, you are the functional consultant for supply chain implementation. And we go find that one risk that is still unmitigated that relates to supply chain implementation, and we immediately pop to you a proposed best next action that go, hey, on your project, here's an unmitigated risk, here's a link to some guidance we have on the topic, and try and bring guidance from the agentic experience directly to the consultant that can be in the best position to mitigate that, right? If you're the project manager, you don't get the functional risk on how to configure supply chain management, right? We go, hey, you don't have a project sponsor, dude, make a plan, right? So that's the kind of way we're thinking about it. So I would say moving to a live risk model, and in my view, all project management is risk management, right? We got to put risk management center stage, right? Yeah. And know that a risk is not a bad word. A red risk, right, means we've seen something, it's going to be difficult. And if we've seen it, we can do something about it, right? The worst risk is the one that's not on the risk list, and it's going to burn us just before we go live.
Yeah, that's then you don't know indeed what's going to happen, and if you don't know, you can't prepare for it. So last week I was at Directions, and there was also a lively discussion about AI coming into play, and that would also force partners to dive into other areas like more IT security areas and dive more in data science, and the expectation was that partners need to specialize themselves more in those areas. Is that something you recognize as well?
I really see that partners almost have to expand their skill set, because just with AI being a dominant theme, it pulls together all those other themes. If you can't trust the underlying data, right, it's an issue. If you don't really have good data quality, how would you know if you don't have good data quality? Maybe you'll see it from the results of your agent, but that's too late, right? So now comes the data science, the modeling of the data, the enrichment of the data. There's just so much that comes in. So I think it stands to reason that all partners will have to expand their skill sets to remain relevant. You're not going to have nice and tidy Dynamics 365 implementations that just stick with what I would call the classic product as we used to know it. This is going to be infused with AI. Actually, in 2 years' time, I doubt if Microsoft will be selling app licenses. I think we will be selling AI consumption, and the AI will orchestrate the business process that uses the underlying app. The apps aren't going away, but that's not what you're going to buy. That's not what the user is going to see, right? Now, if you consider the shift happening, and we're all driving the car as it is changing, right?
Yeah.
You really need to be investing. I invest 25% of my people's time in keeping their learning on AI current, 25% of their time, because that's the world we are in, right?
Yeah. So what I would like to do is share a QR code with everyone to participate in a Mentimeter. So if you like, please grab your phone and scan the code. And the first question is that what I would like to get a little bit of an opinion of everyone from is in which domain do you expect to invest in the upcoming 12 months? And I mean in the main, and there's some examples in the questionnaire. I'll switch to that as well. Let me go there. There we go. And there we will also see your answers. Is it more that you expect to put more emphasis on, expect more to dive into IT security, data science, maybe the combination with Microsoft 365 AI, because that's of course becoming more closer together with the ERP Dynamics 365 world, or maybe other areas. So I would like everyone to participate and submit your answers, and I don't see any answers yet. So I wonder, is it because I see 5 people dialing in, but they have not answered. There we see some results coming in. So maybe while we're waiting for the results, and Maarten, maybe can you already answer from your perspective? Do you expect that you need to invest with your team in other domains of expertise than purely the Dynamics expertise area?
Yeah, I definitely think that's point 3 and point 5, both the governance side of it, what Paul just mentioned. For PMs right now, a lot of manual work goes into governing the projects, where we can use agentic models later on to do the work for us and then flag where we are off track. Where nowadays is a lot of manual work for PMs to figure it out, checking budgets, scopes, where are the impedances happening. That can all be taken over by an agentic model that will push that information to us. And I think so that's the governance model. And I think also the option 3 here on the screen will be relevant in 365, what AI brings. And there are a lot of involvements and developments going on there. So it's really rapidly changing.
If I could add a comment on that, Maarten, I am a little bit surprised that governance and compliance is at the bottom of the list, because on the compliance side, all your customers are really worried about compliance. They want to know if that data that they put into the AI is going to teach the AI, is it leaking to their competitor? And so in Microsoft, we talk about responsible AI, and it's a whole lot of things that look how I just talked about it. Now it's number 2.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think people are making up their minds.
Yeah, but responsible AI reviews is now a standard part, and we have our legal department actually participating in that. So if I have a really great idea for an agent, maybe something that I would like to deploy in Success by Design to you also, you can use it. I have to pass that responsible AI review, and that puts a bigger brake on my project than the technology. I can cut that agent sometimes in 2 days, and I can't get through the responsible AI review in 2 weeks, right? So it will be an area that you would need to look at, because your customer will challenge that creative solution that you're offering to them. And then you need your story lining up, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. So if we continue on that path, the influence of AI on ERP projects and implementation projects, and we went over the success by design process and the different steps. If you look at that matrix, that model, is it likely that Microsoft, of course, wants us to all treat ourselves as our customer zero and try to investigate and experiment ourselves with AI and how it can improve our own business processes and become more productive? If we then look at success by design and the different steps, what are likely candidates for sort of agentic automation? Maarten, would you like to answer that? You touched on several of the challenges. Maybe you can address where you see AI becoming a very logical solution, maybe to tackle one of those challenges.
Yeah, one of the challenges that I mentioned in the presentation was testing in general, the testing strategy. And this is also where we see at the customer side that it takes quite a bit of effort. It's not easy to come up with good test cases and to execute the tests. So this is an area that I would be really interested in, how an agentic model can help us out.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If I could share a story, Maarten. So one of our Dynamics partners that is operating in Europe, they're not in the meeting, so I will leave their name confidential for the moment. But they just finished a big internal project. And for this project, they, as you do on big projects, they wrote a whole series of test cases. So their first use of AI was really to help them write the test case, because a test case is a fairly standardized script. You can define in pretty much plain English, what you need the test to cover, and can generate a bunch of test cases that will. And it's actually amazing, because the business process is generally known by the general intelligence of the AI. So the test cases are actually quite innovative and actually came with scenarios that the developers forgot about. And this is also good, right? Because you're now prompting, a lot of people talk about test-driven development, right? Start with your test, because it tells you what you need to develop to pass your tests, right? Mm-hmm. So very interesting to see new angles coming in from that side. But then what I thought was a real beautiful win, the last thing that you do on a project is the user documentation and the training manuals, right? Because you're cutting code until the last day and hoping to pass all your tests. They used the testers' input to the AI and said, generate for us, but they didn't want to do a user manual in the classic printed sense of the word. So what they did, they used AI to do the voice and basically cut voice recordings, right, of the entire training material that they overlaid in PowerPoint slides. And, so now there's a series of slides that people get from, and the AI gives the voice and the content and the structure of the slides. There was some human hands in there still, but it really rested to a large extent on the work done in the testing cycle. So they really had a much shorter cycle getting that out. So those are two interesting angles. And then when you start talking about testing in AI, your tools themselves need to be capable of, invoking agents and so on. So it's not going to be the test tools that we used yesterday. It's going to be a new set of tools. So you have to start looking at things like evaluation frameworks, and they do use AI itself. And we shouldn't trivialize it. Somebody said the other day to me, but how can you use AI to test AI? Does that not defeat the purpose, If the models are distinct, they use different types of logic. You can do that. It doesn't mean you can't test AI with AI. So we shouldn't be simplistic in our reasoning. You can absolutely test AI with AI. You can take the output that your co-pilot tells you. You can give it to an agent, say, fact check this for me. And that's a different approach to the generation approach. And it can tell you if that's not good. It can tell you if there's missing information. So this becomes something that where AI would be really valuable. And the last thing, testing is expensive when you do round 2 and round 3 of a system, because what do? You go change the user interface and then all your test cases break. So you've got all that lovely regression test libraries, but they now break. If you use AI-capable testing tools, they are more flexible in dealing with the nuances of the user interface. If the button changed from save in English to Speicher in German, it will get that, and it will know that that's the button that needs to be clicked. So it doesn't break for small things in the user interface. So that can help a lot as well.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
Right. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the chat, but I see you already addressed one of the questions that came in, right? Very good. Thank you for that. Good. So let's move on. Actually, about requirements. Last week at Direction, it was also interesting to see that they had an agent that was created if a user story comes in for the development team, and it was not clear enough. How often do you get a sort of half-baked description of what is expected to be? The agent was actually capable of gathering more and more information from this business side, so it became a real full, complete definition of the user story that you then can actually, as a development team, put quicker on your sprint, for example. I thought it was also a very nice example. All right. Agna, we haven't heard you at all yet. Is there maybe something you want to add to the discussion in terms of how Companion is helping partners? You're mute. So you have to unmute yourself first.
I
Yes.
hope you can hear me now,
Yes,
right?
now we can. Please.
I just got a good audience, enjoying conversation myself, and also just sitting silent at the back. But honestly, when we're preparing and for this conversation, and in general, out of experience, I believe we are navigating in very different levels in ecosystem, right? We have some customers who are still pretty much in the versions 9 or 12 in the short step methodology mindset. Then we have a term agility, who I'm not sure that everybody really understands what this means. And then with pretty much success by design is bringing up on the table. And now we have the agentic approach that bringing us in their daily changes, and as we are talking with Paul, like every day might be new, right? And we as Companion finding ourselves like in the middle of the conversations between customers, between partners, where they have completely different maturity, and especially when you are bringing different partners ecosystem to different legal entities across the different countries that also have different maturities and cultures. So we are probably more and more participating as human agents for change management. We're dragging the innovation of technology from Microsoft and just helping everybody to be on the same page. And depending, probably as at the very beginning, the answer was that it really depends on the project, and probably we're finding ourselves where people are using statements from different understanding bases. So somebody talks analysis, somebody talks discovery, and suddenly they're getting different results, everybody unhappy, and we just somebody in between trying to put everybody on the same page. And maybe as the same outcome of Copilot, what I really liked, when you're putting all the framework of the project, they're suddenly getting completely different proposals for different stages to be managed, right? And here we're probably saying we will take agents for the testing, and probably for the requirements analysis, we will take success by design, where the most, development will go over the same old-fashioned short-step methodology. We have documentation and testing scenarios and putting into the agents. So pretty much as a Companion, we probably looking at all sides of cut-off of the areas, and at the end of the day, trying to make everybody on the same page from the success. So at our stage, the agents would become somebody like helpers for us to understand where we are, and then more like advocacy. And this is where governance is coming into the play, actually just ensuring that the people are talking the same language from the customers and the partners and Microsoft perspective.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
I'm also looking at the time and to see if I see another chat message coming in. So let me quickly check that question. If it's a concrete question. Someone has to leave. Okay, that's also nice to know. Thank you for letting us know. Now, I think it's nice. I have one last Mentimeter. Also given what you just said, Agna, everyone is in a different state. So I'm just very curious from everyone here to understand how soon do you expect that you will infuse this agentic by design into your own environment, in your project delivery. So it'd be really nice to get an understanding from everyone here in the group. Let us know. Okay, I see already people in 0 to 6 months, 30 to 2 years, 30 months to 40, to almost 2 years. It's interesting to see. Yes, because I can indeed imagine, depending also on your customer base, some customer base may be easier open up for that, or the project may be easier applicable for this than other areas maybe. So we see now, there's some early adopters, I would say, and some people who are expecting it to take a little bit more time.
So for people in the 13 to 24 months bucket, I want to just share one risk that you need to be aware of, right? There are a bunch of partners that focus on agentic experiences, right? And they agile and they move faster. They don't worry so much about the tanker like we all do, right? And they can eat your food, right? Because they're going to go to your customer and they're going to implement agentic experiences where you put the shields up, you're not going there yet, right? This is the one thing. In the AI world, 13 months is a year. That's a long time out.
Yeah.
That's a really long time out. The world is moving very quickly, and this is probably the most significant change in IT since we went to the cloud, and before that, the internet, right? So I think it feels risky to be an early adopter. And of course it is. You deal with different types of troubles. I get that, right? So I'm not saying you should be in the 0 to 6 months, but you probably want to be in the 6 to 13 rather than the 13 to 24, right? If you think you're avoiding risk by delaying, you're not. You're going to just face a different risk in this space. I want to quote Charles Lamana just to leave you with an interesting thought. He said, I know many of our partners will stay in the classic business. They're going to stick with the tanker. That's what they do. That's what they're comfortable with, etc. He says, and I don't think those partners will be with us in 2 years' time, right? And I'm okay with that, is what he said, right? So from Microsoft, we will be giving more support, more cover to partners that adopt.
Yeah.
And actually, we have right now much resource that we can make available to you because we know it's new, and we also need to make it successful, right? So you should leverage the relationships that you have with Microsoft via Companion, via Fast Track if you have a direct relationship, because you can get the support for it. And pick your opportunities. You don't have to bring it to every project, but make sure that there's 1 or 2 projects out there where you look at the maturity of your customer, you go, that customer is ready to play. And then figure out how you work with that customer to do something so you build your experience. Don't wait 13 months before you start. That would be my feedback.
Good. Very, very good. Thank you very much. I see one last question in the chat. Not addressed, but difficult agent handling customizations.
I would love to address that, Jens. Very good question. In the past, when we saw something where the product didn't have a capability and the customer absolutely needed it, right, we would go to a customization, right? This has been the classic pattern in the past. And Martin made the good call, and I think you guys are all aware that we don't want to over-customize the system. So you're going to talk to the customer, see if he can go with standard. But okay, some customers are going to go, no, we can't go with the standard. This is our need, and we're going to build the customization normally. Now we should think agentic first. This is the first part of agentic first that you put into action. You say, do I have to do the customization, or can I do an agent that works around the shortcoming or around the gap, right? And quite often you will find that answer can be yes. Now think about it. Do you want to code in English, or do you want to code in X++ or in C#? Now, I prefer to code in English, right? It's more maintainable, it's quicker, right? But it has a different character. It's probabilistic, not deterministic, right? You have different challenges. So there's learning that you need to go through. But you should probably challenge yourself every time and say, do I need to do the customization, or can I actually jump straight in and do an agent here? Real working example, commerce implementation needed a single view on the point of sale. Somebody put an AI agent in there that generates an adaptive cart with all the varying things that we can figure out from the customer, when he was last on our website, what's the ratings for our product, etc. And you've just extended point of sale without cutting well, the only line of code you cut is to host the adaptive card inside the form, right? But all the logic is a pure English programming. That solution was built in 2 days. You can't do that with customization. So let me leave you with that. Corinda, I'm going to have to duck and dive as well, by the way. My next meeting has started.
Yeah, no
Thanks,
worries.
everybody. I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul, Maarten, Agne, for your contribution and your valuable insights and experience that you shared. I know, Islam, you prepared a survey. I think we need to send that by email afterwards to everyone to ask for feedback, because, of course, we are also in an experimental phase. We like to get your feedback as well on these kinds of webinars. But thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely remainder of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.